Orangutans, which also live in jungles, they are russet colored. Their hair is reddish colored. The rest of them have dark browns and blacks and variations therein. They turn gray-haired like we do when they get old, and so then they're albinos, like they're albino gorillas. But basically they're blacks and browns. But the agogwis are reddish-haired. Okay? Now that's the four kinds. All of them, when they are seen, are described as essentially the same physiologically. All of them. They look like this. They're described by wherever in the world they're seen, they're described as having no foreheads, large, heavy brow ridges, big, round, deep-set eyes, large noses that spread flat across their faces. This is not quite as large as I think it ought to be. Mouths that stick off their face the way this one does. No chin. Heads tucked into their torsos like that, make them move like long, extraordinarily long arms that dangle close to their knees, and they're covered with hair from head to toe. Now, take away the hair, and what did I just describe to you? A pre-human, right? You just saw it for yourself. A pre-human in every way is a hominoid. So what does that tell us? The pre-humans are hominoids. Hominoids are pre-humans. You can see it. If it's true what everybody says, and we're talking thousands of people over centuries giving this same description, I think it would stand up in a court of law when you got thousands of witnesses saying, I saw this thing at the site. It's enough to win in most courts, except the court of public opinion. I would venture that everybody walked in here today, or most of you, felt that what you read in the tabloids about hominoids is true. It's not true. They want you to believe that they're a joke, but they're not. They're very real. All right, now, how do we know they're real? Let's talk about proof. They leave tracks. They leave tracks. And we have over 10,000 tracks from around the world, either photographed or plaster casted or both. Now, what do we know about tracks? How easy is it to fool someone with tracks, with these fake tracks? What we're told is that all of them, all the thousands that we have, scientists tell us they're all fake. Why are they all fake? Because these can't exist. So anything that can't exist certainly can't make a real track. If one track was real, then all of science is just what we call a blowed-up peckerwood. They just have no chance. They have to go back to the drawing board. Well, they don't want to do that, so they just issue a blanket condemnation. Impossible. Now, what do we know about tracks? We know a lot. It's a whole branch of science. It's called ichnology, studying the tracks tracks left on fossils. We know what primitive people can do with tracks. It's the thing you have to pass on to your children, the tracks in your area, so that your children can grow up and learn how to feed their families out of the environment and learn how to keep from feeding the family of some wild animal. We know about tracks. And what we know about tracks, two quick rules, next slide, is this. Anytime a living fleshy foot like a human foot or a hominoid foot or even a camel pad, it doesn't matter. But in the case of a human-like foot, the combination of 26 bones, 33 joints, and dozens of muscles, ligaments, and tendons makes a foot that goes down sequentially. You know, it's sequential from sort of a midline out in very subtle movements. So as that happens, it makes a track that pushes from the inside out very gradually, relatively speaking, and it leaves something on the inside called compression lines. Compression lines. Can't miss it. Next slide. Now, if it's a fake track, whether that track be wood, plaster, plastic, doesn't matter, it's not going to be segmented, because people with artificial feet do not get segmented feet. Can't make them. It's too subtle. The movements are too subtle. So it's going to have to go down of a piece, together, totally, and it's going to have to be stamped or pressed into the medium. You with me? So when that happens, what you get are these tiny cracks on the side called impact ridges, and they raise up and they have splits on the top and on the outside. Now I can give this little lesson that I just gave to you to a group of first graders, lay out some tracks in front of them, some real and some fake, give them magnifying glasses, and they won't miss one. It's just that easy to know the difference. And yet we're told that, you know, forest rangers that know every track out in the woods, bear, elk, whatever, they see a hominoid track and they say it's real, well then suddenly the anthropologists say, well no, you're wrong about that one. Even though it looks the same, they use the same skills, no, you don't know what you're talking about in that one particular instance. Well, it's ridiculous. It's absurdity piled on absurdity. Of course they know what they're seeing. But you can't get an anthropologist or a professor or anybody to go out and take a look at one. We had one here in Dallas tomorrow. You get the media out there, you wouldn't get any of them. They don't want to go out there and have to say, yeah, it's real. Looks real to me. What they really don't want to have to do is go out there and just bald-faced lie, which is what they would be required to do. So they just won't go. Keep it in mind. Okay, next slide. All right, this is what a human foot looks like, and this is how a human foot works. Notice, if you will, the length versus the width. Length to width ratio. Notice, too, that as we walk, we come down on our heel, we swing our momentum around our arch, we swing over into the ball, and then we press out through the big toe, which is a thrusting mechanism, and this is the thrust generator of the ball, and the other four toes pull up and act as balancers. If you ever watch your own foot when you walk, you'll see that your big toe will press down flat, and your other four will pull up to balance you as you walk through. Why? Because your momentum is swinging from here to here to here, and you're off balance. This is a bad way to walk, actually. When you do time and motion studies of the way we walk, we're very discombobulated. We have a very, very awkward, unsmooth walk. Why? Because you can see it. We're swinging our momentum through our feet, zigzagging. We're locking our knees. We're falling through our hips. We're basically doing like this. It's almost like the Frankenstein walk exaggerated. We have a very unsmooth gait. Surprising, isn't it? We don't walk well. We do not walk well for an upright walking creature. Something went wrong in our developmental process. It's hard to figure out. Keep that in mind. Okay, next slide. This is a typical hominoid track. This is a Bigfoot track. You can see it's 16 inches long, but you know, this is what you're going to get based on that. I like this one because it's so clear. It's that nice powdery dirt you get at the end of a dirt road in late summer, like we are now. And as you can see, it's completely redesigned relative to the human foot. This is the midpoint right in here. The ankle is well shifted forward. The heel is extended back, much widened, as you see. The forefoot is greatly shortened and greatly widened. And notice that all five toes, which have basically the same shape, look at that, and all five are balancers. They're moving, they're thrusting through the forefoot here, and got a little notch here, so it's kind of almost a two-part thrust mechanism. It's a completely redesigned foot. Why? It's carrying a completely redesigned body. Remember, the hominoids are much bigger than us, carry much more weight. The bones are much more robust than ours. It's a completely redesigned foot for a completely redesigned body, which makes sense, does it not? Now, the real true fake hominoid tracks, by the way, when they say that, you know, they've got a track and it's a real true fake one, what do they have? They have a human foot built to this size. The people generally don't even have sense enough to know that you have to redo them. So, these are real, and you can see, but the most interesting thing is, remember we swung our momentum through here, out here? Well, these guys have no arch. You can't have an arch carrying 600 pounds. You got a flat foot. And so notice that the momentum line is right up the chute here, very straight. Look at that. Isn't that cool? These guys walk right. These guys walk correctly for an upright walking creature. These guys developed that. We didn't. They do it right and we do it wrong. Okay, next slide. Okay, here's something else that the best hominoid tracks have. Dermal ridges. Now, what are dermal ridges? They're your fingerprints on your hands and on your feet. All primates have fingerprints, hands, and foot. That's why they take a baby's when it's born. Fingers are too small to deal with. Foot's just as good. Take a footprint. Now, this is a conspiracy, folks. This is a conspiracy that science asks you to believe in. That people are out there making these articulating feet that make perfectly real-looking tracks, and they take the trouble to incise dermal ridges in the bottom of them. With what? With lasers? This is extremely fine work. Look at your fingerprints. You can't get your fingerprints altered. If you're a criminal with a fingerprint problem, you have to cut them off. You see what it is? So, this conspiracy, whatever it is the absolute height of absurdity. Just the height of absurdity. We're asked to believe all of these incredible lies. It's not true. These things are real. Keep it in mind. Okay, next one. All right, here's another look at a comparison of a Bigfoot print, Bigfoot track, and a human foot. Just again, so you get it in mind, the heel extension, the midline, and the differences, okay? Now, let's look at another one, another pair. All right, this pair here, a male and a female taken out of a cave, and the reason they're so grungy looking is they're not out of a nice medium, they're out of clay in the bottom of a cave. But nonetheless, you can see they're clearly hominoid in every design, the heel, you know, it's hominoid. Would you all agree with that? What problem are you having? Do you need to... Do you want to change it now? Okay, so would anybody here argue with this being a hominoid track, pair of hominoid tracks, right? Male and female and all that, right? Wrong. Not hominoid. Guess what these are? Neanderthal. Absolutely accepted as Neanderthal from a cave in Toriano, Italy, 30,000 years ago, found with Neanderthal artifacts and bones. No question, Neanderthal. What does this tell us? Neanderthals are hominoids, are they not? Indeed they are. No question about it. What does this further tell us? That every creature leading down to Neanderthals, every one of the pre-humans is what? A hominoid. Because you saw the heads were the same, why would the feet not be the same? What would make the feet change? If the heads don't change. So what we're really looking at, I hope you're beginning to see, is a string of hominoids leading down to Cro-Magnons, us. Now, we can't prove what I just told you, it's just logic, because we don't have the feet of any of the pre-humans, except Neanderthals, but we do have Neanderthals. Let's take a look at the Neanderthal foot relative to the human foot. Here we go, Neanderthal, human, human, Neanderthal. Just take a look, folks. Look at the difference. This is the heel of a human compared to the much extended and much thickened heel of a Neanderthal. This is our ankle base right here. Not this bone, this little thing right here is our whole ankle base. This is their ankle base. Look at the extension and look at this pushing forward. And, you know, it's just carrying so much more weight, it has to be this way. Notice, if you will, the gross shortening of the forefoot and the widening in the Neanderthal relative to us. Look at the equalizing of the toes relative to ours. Look at you can see the bend of our momentum in here. You can see how dead solid, perfect, as the saying goes. This, how squared away and balanced this is relative to ours. Do you see it? It's clear. Physiologically, there is no comparison between these two except that they both carry upright walking bodies. Beyond that, you can't make a comparison. Night and day. Understand that. Okay? Now, if I'm right about all this, and I believe that I am, then that means that these creatures are out there in great numbers all over the world. Hundreds of thousands to maintain breeding populations, right? They are. Next slide, please. Let's take a look at where. Okay, here's the world divided up basically into the arable land. Take away the deserts, which nobody really lives in, nothing. Take away the tundra, the ice, and everything you have left is arable land. Well, they live in the black parts, the heavy forests, and the jungles, and we live in the pinks and the blues and the pretty areas. Now, this is very grossly general terms, but in general, they have 45% of the arable land for themselves. We have 55%. It used to be about 50-50. We've cut down about 5%, and we're on our way to moving it down to 60-40, our way, because we're cutting so much all the time. But as you can see, they still have a lot of areas left to roam. Now, obviously, this is not exactly, correct, because of the 5,000 sightings that we have just in the U.S. and Canada alone, what are considered good sightings, 5,000, half of them occur east of the Mississippi. These things are everywhere. They're not just isolated up here in the Pacific Northwest. It's just where the most sensational sightings come from, because that's where the first ones that hit the media came from. We have them everywhere. Have them here in Texas. Have them in Louisiana, where I'm from. Have them everywhere. Every state has reports of hominoids that are considered credible. Why? Because they move in forests. They live in forests. That's their superhighways. They can go anywhere through forests, through woods. And they migrate. They migrate with seasons, so they travel a lot. So they're out there. They're out there all over the world, in great numbers. It's just that we don't see them because for the most part they stay in their